Anybody? No, that's it. Yeah. Morning, everyone, and I'd like to call this meeting to order. Before we allow the members of the UDeCOTT to introduce themselves, I have a few preliminary housekeeping remarks. This is the 8th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprise in this parliamentary session. It's the first public hearing for this committee as it's currently comprised, in which we examine the UDeCOTT. This hearing is being broadcast live on Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, ParlView. Members of the viewing and listening audience can send comments via email to parl101@ttparliament.org and our Facebook page at facebook.com/ttparliament or on Twitter at ttparliament. That is capital T, twice, TT, capital P for Parliament, the rest lowercase. So we invite comments and feedback from the public via those media. So next we welcome the officials of the UDeCOTT Corporation, and we would like the chairman to introduce his team that is assembled here today before this committee.
Good morning. I'm Mrs. Simon Thorne Mora Quinones, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Housing and Urban Development.
Mr. Andre Oberlin, Chief Financial Officer for UDeCOTT.
Noel Garcia, Chairman of UDeCOTT.
Good morning. Abina Richards, Chief Operating Officer.
Good morning. Chris Jagrup, Chief Construction Engineer.
Good morning. Catherine Denbo, Chief Legal Officer, UDeCOTT.
I would now like to invite members of the committee to introduce themselves, starting on my left.
Adrian Leons, member.
Wade Mark, member.
Brigadier General Ansel Antoine, retired member.
Alison Bash, member.
Good morning. Cherry Ann Critchlow Coburn, member.
Morning, Fazal Karim, member.
And of course, I am Dr. Lester Henry, Vice Chair of the committee. I'm sitting in today for the substantive chair, Senator David Small, who is out of the country at present. So I'll make a few brief opening remarks and then invite a brief statement from the chairman. We are here in this public hearing, and as we have been doing in recent times, reminding all the entities that have come before us that our powers, the powers that have us here this morning, comes from the Constitution and the standing orders of the Parliament. So we take this business very seriously, as we have been doing particularly in this session, because in the interest of transparency and accountability, we need to get information that is useful to us as a committee in our deliberations and putting forward our recommendations afterwards, and also information that could be of interest and useful to the public. And that's why we're here today, and under this particular powers of this Constitution and the standing orders. So, in terms of the the proceedings, after some brief introductory remarks, which I'll invite the chairman to do, we will have a series of questioning from the members. We will begin our formal questioning. So, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and morning to the members of the committee and to the viewing public. The Urban Development Corporation of Trinidad and Tobago is a state enterprise incorporated under the Companies Act. Its shareholder is the Minister of Finance and is governed by a board of directors and supported by an executive management team headed by a chief executive officer. UDeCOTT considers itself to be the government's primary developer of choice. Arising from the recommendation of the UF Commission, UDeCOTT has focused on integrating transparency, accountability, and value for money in its policies and procedures in order to generate social and economic benefits for its stakeholders. This has been demonstrated through the introduction and use of global best practices in procurement, project development, construction, and management. UDeCOTT's current construction projects fall broadly in the following portfolios: the healthcare program, national security, police and fire stations, government office accommodation, historical restoration projects, and Tobago projects. Some of the challenges that we currently face are absence of a strategic plan. UDeCOTT is currently without a strategic plan. This has resulted in operational policies and procedures being developed but not refined to fulfill a strategic objective. The UDeCOTT board and executive management have identified the development of a strategic plan as a priority for the corporation's success. A strategic plan is being aggressively developed and is anticipated by the fourth quarter of 2016 that this plan will be finalized and approved for implementation. Absence of current audited financial statements. UDeCOTT has struggled with maintaining up-to-date financial statements. UDeCOTT's last published audited financial statements are for the financial year ending December 31st, 2007. The audit exercise for 2008 is completed and awaiting approval prior to publication, but took a considerable time to conclude. This was due to the fact that UDeCOTT records are incomplete and several documents have been submitted to the Anti-Corruption Investigation Bureau. These documents had to be retrieved in order for proper audits to be conducted. The audits for 2009 and 2010 will be challenged with similar issues. UDeCOTT has obtained advice and is pursuing alternative strategies for accelerating the completion of the audited statements to a status of currency by September 2017. Another challenge is the failure to receive timely settlement of funds from client ministries, and this has impacted on our ability to meet our obligations to many of our contractors. In conclusion, UDeCOTT strives to be the premier provider of project management and facility management services in Trinidad and Tobago. In order to achieve this objective, its systems and processes continuously require adaptation and improvement to keep abreast with current trends and development. The systems at UDeCOTT today reflect significant improvement over its position when the up recommendations were made. There is, however, improvements that are required in several areas, and the board and management are committed to identifying and implementing change where it is required. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And before I open up the floor to other members, I will just, in our submission here, in our list, we had the CEO of the company as down to be present today. Is there any explanation as to why?
Yes, my apologies for not giving an explanation earlier. Mrs. Chow unfortunately had a personal emergency and had to travel to the United States and is not expected back until late next week. It was unforeseen and a genuine emergency, which I would not like to go in here publicly as to what is the nature of the emergency.
That's fine, Mr. Chairman. Okay. So I now open up to members. I acknowledge Member Karim.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Chairman. We're very sorry to hear about the unforeseen circumstance of the Chief Executive Officer. But to you, Mr. Chairman, is it possible that you might be able to indicate to us, and I'm just following the responses from your issues paper, objective one being the human resources and organizational practices. Will you be able to elucidate to us the appointment of the CEO, the process that was followed or is being followed if that person is not appointed or is acting? So we'd like you to give us the circumstances of the person who is in the position of the Chief Executive Officer. Has that position, or was it advertised? The process it is being followed or has been followed? And might you be able to also indicate the remuneration package of that position in the organization?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fazal Karim. When the board assumed office, unfortunately, shortly thereafter, the substantive CEO indicated that another opportunity had arisen, and he therefore submitted his resignation. The corporation therefore found itself in a position where a new board was coming in and the resignation of the substantive CEO. In consultation with the line minister, it was agreed that we would appoint an interim CEO and immediately advertise the position of CEO. It was anticipated that this exercise would have taken between 3 to 4 months, and Ms. Chow, who was the interim CEO, indicated that she would only accept that position on the condition that it was temporary. So there was never a question of Ms. Chow being the substantive CEO. We did advertise the position, and we used a reputable HR consultant to assist us in the recruitment of the CEO. After a long but transparent process, we have been able to identify a CEO, and we have issued a letter of offer, and we have given the prospective proponent until Friday, the 6th of May, to respond. We are optimistic that he would accept the offer, and therefore we would have CEO sometime in the coming future, in the next 4 to 6 weeks. I don't have the remuneration package in front of me, but I can submit that in writing to the committee. I am satisfied as chairman that we followed a very transparent process and that the process has produced the best possible candidate for the position of CEO.
Member.
Just a follow-up question. We looked at your staff turnover, which was reduced substantially in a sense from what we would have been seeing over the years. Do you have, as a board that has just come in, do you have any reasons that you can prefer as to why that would have had those figures?
No. As a board, we took a particular position that unless it was absolutely necessary, we were not too concerned with what transpired in the past, that we will focus on the future. We are fortunate that the majority of our staff, save and except the CEO, as I indicated, who said that he had another opportunity, all of the staff that we inherited have stayed on with us. The turnover in our short period has been minimal. I don't know what happened in the past, what accounted, and quite frankly, we are not too interested in going back to inquire on what we consider water under the bridge.
Before we move on, I note the agreement of the chairman to submit the package of the CEO to the committee in writing. That's okay? All right, we move on. Member Kova. Good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garcia, I noted your statement with respect to moving on, but I believe UDeCOTT should seek to determine what would have been the reasons, because you would have had a staff turnover rate of between 10 to 15% over the last 3 to 4 years, which is considerably high. So I believe UDeCOTT needs to be mindful of what would have been the reasons for that staff turnover. And even when we look at 2016, it is already at 3%. And we are into the 5th month in the year. So I believe UDeCOTT should seek to determine what would have given rise to that high turnover rate. That being said, I have noted that UDeCOTT's organizational structure, provides for 280 positions. However, you have 101 vacancies. Is that vacancy still 101?
I'll ask.
Thank you, Madam Member. Currently, the vacancies stand as represented in our submission. The reason being, UDeCOTT's mandate is very flexible and subject to change. In 2015, at the point in time, a decision was taken by the board to expand the organizational structure to include additional positions primarily in the construction department for project managers, as at that point in time it was seen that the portfolios would have been increasing. So certain positions were added to the organizational structure, but intended to be filled on a phased basis.
So, okay, you would have indicated it's to be filled on a phased basis. Could you give us some indication as to what time frame you are looking at? Because the concern of the committee is that an organization's performance is linked to its human resources. And if you have a situation where out of 280 positions, you have 101 vacancies, that would be cause for concern. So could you tell us how many of those positions are considered key or critical positions to the performance of the organization, and what impact has those vacancies had on UDeCOTT's ability to carry out its mandate and achieve its objectives?
Thank you. We are confident that the capacity at UDeCOTT is sufficient to carry out the current mandate. As and when projects are added to the mandate, the positions will be filled accordingly. So we don't have a time frame per se, but it is on a rolling basis, dependent on the projects and the mandates that we receive from the Cabinet.
Mr. Chairman, through you again. Mr. Garcia, you would have indicated that UDeCOTT doesn't currently have a strategic plan. So what would have informed UDeCOTT's goals and objectives in the absence of a strategic plan over the past periods?
What I've been able to glean is that UDeCOTT basically depended on the directives of its shareholder as to what its plans and goals should be. This board has taken a decision that we need to operate with a strategic plan, that a strategic plan is necessary to give us a direction to allow the organization to grow in an orderly fashion, and also to provide a basis to measure our performance. It seems to me that UDeCOTT was more client-driven rather than strategically driven. And that's the only explanation I have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before I move to the next member, I want to interject on the same theme of staffing, that in your submission, you suggested that the staff complement has almost doubled in size from 2011 to current. Could we get some kind of explanation as to why? And because you're seeing the staff size double, and then we have a problem of vacancies at the same time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wouldn't say that we have a problem of vacancies. The vacancies exist on the organizational structure so that they can be filled as and when the need arises. And it can be seen from 2011 to 2016 exactly how that process would have been implemented over time. As new projects came on, staff was recruited and staff was engaged. That's the reason you would see the difference between 2011 of 93 employees versus 2016 at 173 employees. Another reason is that UDeCOTT has taken on internally a lot of the services which were previously outsourced. So for instance, in 2010, 2011, UDeCOTT outsourced primarily its facilities management services as well as some of its project management services. In recent times and over the years, those services are now being provided in-house by UDeCOTT staff. So as a result, the positions were added to the organizational structure, additional project managers, quantity surveyors, architects were hired. UDeCOTT has also taken over responsibility directly for managing some of its assets, such as the government campus Plaza Parkade, as well as the International Waterfront Center car park. And in so doing, has had to hire a number of additional staff to carry out those operations.
Okay. Member Mark?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And may I welcome the UDeCOTT team to this meeting of the Joint Select Committee on State Enterprises. Mr. Garcia, you did make a statement when you began your remarks to the extent that you talked about a challenge that you are faced with. And that had to do with the timely settlements of outstanding payments from various ministries and clients. Would you be in a position to give us a summary, and then you can detail it in writing subsequently, as to, first of all, what is the kind of settlement or outstanding sums of monies owed to UDeCOTT by various government agencies, ministries, departments for work done thus far? And could you name those ministries, agencies, and government departments that owe UDeCOTT? You can give us a summary, as I said, because you may not have all the details, and you can submit it in writing at a subsequent time.
I can speak to it in estimate form. The estimate is approximately 500 million outstanding from the various ministries. And the two primary ministries that we have outstanding would be the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of National Security. The others, of course, would be other ancillary ministries, but those are the primary ones.
Total outstanding amount is about 500 million.
In excess of 500
In
million.
excess of 500.
Approximately.
So, Mr. Garcia, we can get that in writing in detail, right?
Yes.
All right, the second point I wanted to raise with you is the borrowing status of UDeCOTT. From my information, UDeCOTT has a couple loans outstanding involving international organizations or institutions, financial that is, institutions. One for US 100 million, the other one for US 88 million, and the other one for 375 million US. What is the status of repayments on these outstanding loans that UDeCOTT has the responsibility of servicing as it relates to a number of, I would imagine, I guess these loans are associated with the Hyatt Regency, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe you can clear the air for me on that, or for us.
Okay, I would ask the Chief Financial Officer to give some details, but UDeCOTT, by and large, raise funding or financing for a number of projects. The International Waterfront, which is Tower, the CD, and the Hyatt. The government campus, which comprise 4 buildings. The teaching hospital, the Coover Hospital, Ministry of Education building. What I would do is to ask the CFO, if he can, to outline the present status and to give an indication as to if we are servicing those loans and what is the present position.
Okay, so I'll start by giving a breakdown as it relates to each loan. The US $100 million facility relates to the fit out of Tower C and Tower D. The $88 million facility refers to the base building of MOE, the Ministry of Education. The $375 million facility, which is at Barclays Bank.
That's TT?
Yeah, all of this is represented in US dollars, yeah? This is for the Tower C, Tower D, breakfast shed area, parking area, as it relates to the waterfront. These loans are currently all serviced on a semi-annual basis, and they are all up to date in terms of payments.
I would like to remind members and the UDeCOTT team to address your questions and comments through the chair, please.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, through you, you're saying that there are no outstanding payments, or you are not in arrears. All UDeCOTT payments are up to, in terms of currency, you would say that you have met all your obligations thus far as we speak. Through the chair.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, as far as I'm aware, we are up to date with all of our outstanding commitments and all our loans are current.
Chairman, through you, you did mention the Education Ministry and government campus. Are these loans incorporated in those loans that were outlined by the CFO, or are these additional loans? And if so, Mr. Chairman, could you provide the committee with a detailed outline of all the loans that are outstanding, even though you might be servicing these loans, but what would be the total figure involved and the number of projects in terms of each cost as it relates to projects, so we will know these are the projects, these are the loans, and the total loans for 10 projects, X billion or X hundreds of millions. Would you be able to provide that to the committee through the chair?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, yes, we will, and I would ask the CFO, Mr. Chairman, to give a breakdown what he has now. If there's any deficiency, we will correct that in writing to the committee.
Okay, Chairman. So I'll start with the answer facility. That is $223.1 million. That was initially taken, and it's specific to the Real Springs development. The $399 million facility with FCB. This is for the Chancery Lane project. The $233 million facility. This is broken down into three parts: the Penal Hospital, the Hoover Children's Hospital, and the Ministry of National Security police stations. There's a central bank facility for $214 million, and this is for various projects. There's a $225 million facility with FCB. This is also for various projects. There's a $14.92 million facility. This is also for various projects. There's the $497 million facility with FCB. This is for the Brian Lara Stadium. We have another facility, FCIB, for $180.3 million. TT, this is for Chancery Lane project. This is also amalgamated with the $399 million facility, as noted previously, for Chancery Lane. So it's two loans, 399 plus $180.3 million for Chancery Lane. There's the $496 million facility with FCIB. That facility is for the GCP facility. There is a $500 million facility with RBC. That is also for the GCP facility. There's a $3.4 billion facility with RBL, with Republic Bank Limited. That is for the GCP facility as well. There is a HMB facility for $33.9 million. That is specific for UDeCOTT's head office, Sackville Street. There's another one for 108 with HMB as well, TT dollars. That is for the office of the Prime Minister, Sinclair Avenue, sorry. There's a $192 million bond with CBTT for Churchill Roosevelt Uriah Butler Highway interchange. There's a RBL facility for $227.14 million facility. This is for the fit out of the MOE building, the Ministry of Education building. There's a $88 million facility US with Republic Bank, and that is for the Ministry of Education. And then finally, there's a $375 million facility with Barclays Bank for the international waterfront, i.e. the Tower C, Tower D, breakfast shed, etc.
I couldn't really take down all these figures, and I don't know if you were able to add up those numbers. Would you want to give us a ballpark figure of all that you have outlined in terms of loans that are outstanding by UDeCOTT in terms of all these various projects?
The total value of loans outstanding as at the end of February is $8.6 billion, converted at a rate of 6.4 TT dollars.
Okay. Thank you, Member.
8.4 billion.
Okay. I now invite Member Bash to...
Mr. Chairman, through you, good morning to the UDeCOTT team. I note with interest that the last audited financial statement was for the year 2008. The ensuing 8 years time lapse spanned 2 successive regimes, and it is totally unacceptable that to date we are still awaiting audited statements for such an extended period. Mention was made that the primary reason for this was the lack of documentation to support financial transactions. Your submission indicated that the 2009 audits are underway with an expected completion timescale of October 2016. We have engaged a consultant to fast-track the completion of the subsequent period from 2010-2015, of which all the audits are expected to be completed at the end of September 2017. Can you explain to the committee the factors that contributed to the backlog and tardiness of the audited financial statements?
Okay, so, Chairman, the main factors is because of the lack of documentation during the periods 2008 to 2010. The issue really lied with the Commission of Inquiry, that, as well as the Anti-Corruption Bureau that took documents during this period. The challenge, of course, is that we have issues in terms of putting together the financial statements for these periods because of the lack of documentation. We are in the process of fast-tracking it. We have engaged an external consultant to fast-track the years by utilizing 2 separate teams, one team specific for backlog and another team specific to current work. The challenge, of course, was managing between the 2 and getting both done simultaneously at the same time, as well as strategizing differently to get the work done. We're doing a different process as opposed to what we had before in terms of using the records. The challenge for me, of course, was that is those main factors. I joined the organization in 2014, and we've been pushing significantly to get the audited financial statements done.
Mr. Chairman, just to add, when the board came in October 2015, we shared the concerns of the committee and the line minister and a number of people. What the board did was to bring on an external consultant, or to extend the external consultant's mandate, and that external consultant is Ernst & Young, the accounting firm. About 3 weeks ago, we kicked off what we call a project to ensure that by September 2017, all the accounts would be up to date. The board had explored a number of ideas to try and bring the accounts, and we discounted all of them. One was a very radical idea, was simply to shut down UDeCOTT and create a new company, but that would not have been palatable both for the board and I think for the general public. We have had the assurance of the external consultants, the management team, and the staff that the September 2017 goal is achievable, and based on what we are seeing, the board is confident that we will bring the accounts up to date. Without audited accounts or without proper accounts, the board is of the view that it is not in a position to make rational decisions. So that we take that responsibility very, very seriously, and we know of some of the constraints that the previous board and management experienced, and I think the CFO outlined those constraints. But notwithstanding that, we are pushing on, and we are confident that we would bring this unsatisfactory situation to an end.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, but just before I move on, you said that you're in the process of developing a strategic plan. And wouldn't this have a significant impact on your ability to develop a strategic plan?
Not really. The external consultants are promising that they would be able to produce some pro forma financial statements that would give the board a pretty good indication as to where we are, so that we do not see the not having up-to-date financial statements, audited statements, being a significant impediment to developing the strategic plan. We have a pretty good idea as to what the financial status is, but having a good idea and having audited financial statements is a different matter. The audited financial statements require backup documents, up-to-date bank reconciliation, and other documentation, but we don't see that impeding the development of the strategic plan. So we're going to do both of them in parallel.
Okay. Senator Bash, anything further?
My other question has to do with UDeCOTT's safety record. Can you provide some specifics on your track record, say, let's say the past 5 years?
With your permission, Chair, over the past 5 years, UDeCOTT has not had any negative safety impacts on projects.
Okay, through you, Mr. Chairman. Your submission indicated that UDeCOTT, through the engineer's internal HSC unit, monitors activities on site to ensure high standards of quality and compliance with safety requirements and the contractor's quality and safety plans. How often are site visits conducted?
In terms of safety, well, UDeCOTT has a presence on site continuously through clerk of works and of course through the engineers, and all aspects of construction, including safety, are monitored on a daily basis.
Is the HSC unit adequately staffed to engage in visits for all the projects?
Through you, Chair. The HSC unit currently has a monitoring and auditing role in the safety on project sites. As the Chief Construction Engineer has explained, the clerk of works and the project managers and the engineers are responsible on a day-to-day basis for safety on site. Notwithstanding, we are currently in a recruitment process to augment the HSC unit.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Member Harim?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. I take it that when you spoke about the Chance William, you're talking about San Fernando.
Teaching hospital, yes.
Will you be able to tell us that the facility that stands on that former Chance William car park whether the entire facility or part of it has been handed over from UDeCOTT, and if so, to whom? Secondly, mention was made of the teaching hospital. Can you tell us the status, the state of readiness of that teaching hospital? Has that been handed over, and if so, to whom? And if not, by when do you expect that facility to be handed over, and to whom? And when do we expect classes at the San Fernando Teaching Hospital to commence, and by whom?
Through you, Chair. All aspects of the San Fernando Teaching Hospital have been handed over by UDeCOTT to the Ministry of Health, including the teaching hospital, the teaching components. UDeCOTT is not in a position to, unfortunately, answer the questions with regard to operations of the teaching hospital, but we can say that we have handed it over to the Ministry of Health.
Just for my clarification, can you say by when that happened? Because within the recent past, we have been hearing that the teaching aspect of it, the teaching part of that facility, was not fully handed over. Now you're saying that it is fully handed over to the Ministry of Health. Can you tell us when did that happen, the time for that?
Yeah. The teaching hospital was handed over in July 2015 to the Ministry of Health. Just one correction, however. The 18th floor of the San Fernando Teaching Hospital is still under the control of UDeCOTT at this time. That's the only aspect of the San Fernando Teaching Hospital that has not been handed over to the Ministry of Health.
Could you give us a reason for that? What's the 18th floor?
In the prior administration, that floor, the 18th floor, was used by the Office of the Prime Minister. And since the new administration has taken office, we are awaiting instruction as to how to treat with the 18th floor going forward.
Fair enough. Member Leons?
Thank you, Chair. Through you. I've been reviewing the attachment that you all in your submission, status of projects, section 10. There are a number of projects that are 98%, 96%, 97% completed. However, there are recurring costs. For example, on the Millie Flares project, where the contract sum is just over 5 million, the recurring cost has caused the cost of the project to reach up to 22 million. My question is, there are the maintenance and the miscellaneous costs for a number of these projects that are almost complete. What is the strategy in the handing over to the client to avoid costs that is miscellaneous, that exceeds the contract sum?
Through you, Chair. Taking the members' question specifically with relation to mail flow, this is one of the projects that is actually not near to completion. As you're aware, the mail flow building has suffered a great amount of deterioration. During that time, UDeCOTT has been providing maintenance services on the building, the grounds. Hence the reason the miscellaneous expenses would have been recurring over the past. I think we took responsibility sometime around 2008 or 2009. So the cost for landscaping and security and just general maintenance of the building would have been running from that time going forward. Most recently, we have been advised that the Office of the Prime Minister has taken over responsibility for all restoration projects, including the Millfleur building, and consideration is being given to the way forward with that particular project. Until such time, however, we will continue to provide maintenance to ensure that the historic building does not suffer from further deterioration.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to follow up in a general sense on Member Leon's question in terms of the internal systems in place at UDeCOTT to monitor and follow cost overruns. Could you give us some kind of elaboration on how you approach these things?
Mr. Chairman, in terms of the management of cost on projects, of course, UDeCOTT, again, through our engineers, would monitor the cost aspects in terms of the overall project budget. In cases where you have additional works required, proposals would be requested for that. These would be evaluated to ensure that there's value for money. And of course, once it's accommodated within the contingency sum of the project, the necessary approvals will be sought and works will be implemented accordingly. But there's a constant monitoring of the project cost on a monthly basis to ensure that we remain within the approved budgets for these projects.
Okay. Member Cowan?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Through you. Mr. Garcia, you would have indicated that UDeCOTT is guided by the principles of accountability, transparency, and good governance, and that you also utilize the respective best practices in those areas. So could you please tell the committee what mechanisms do you have in place to ensure that you adhere to those principles in your project management process?
Through you, Mr. Chair. As our chairman has alluded to in his opening statement, UDeCOTT's policies and procedures have been prepared and implemented specifically with those values in mind: integrity, value for money, accountability, and transparency. Coming out of the off-commission post-2010-2011, a few measures were taken to implement those principles, starting with, for instance, the establishment of a procurement department. Prior to that time, procurement services were not provided in-house at UDeCOTT. So in so doing, we have been able to establish value for money for our clients by, first of all, engaging in open and public tender processes. The vast majority of UDeCOTT's construction contracts are led through an open public tendering process. Throughout the process, we maintain the transparency and accountability. So for instance, all communication is routed through one person so that there can be no allegations of impropriety during the tendering process. We have also ensured that before awarding any contracts, we have undertaken our due diligence to produce reasonable estimates in accordance with industry standards, and contracts are not awarded unless they are within that range. We have aggressively negotiated contracts over the past few years, saving our clients in excess of $200 million simply through the negotiation process. We have engaged consultants, engineers, independent and third party on several of our projects to ensure that there's a third party involved in certifying works and ensuring that value is being performed in accordance with the contracts. So these are just some of the measures that we've involved in our project management and procurement process, and we are confident that those principles are being maintained throughout the project life cycle, from procurement to project closeout.
Okay, one follow-up, yeah.
Well, it's not exactly a follow-up, it's a follow-up on Member Bash's question. Is it that UDeCOTT has had no accidents on any of its project sites? And do you adhere to the Occupational Safety and Health Act at your sites?
Mr. Chair, UDeCOTT is in compliance with the Occupational Safety and Health Act. In terms of accidents on site, I indicated previously that there were no major accidents. However, I think there was an incident on one of our projects in Mayaro where one of the laborers fell off a scaffold, but no major injuries were incurred.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Member Mark?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garcia, Hyatt is a highly profitable hotel owned by the people of TNT. Could you tell us if there is a reserve fund established by UDeCOTT in collaboration with Hyatt for refurbishment works and to ensure that there's constant maintenance of that facility so that we don't have a situation of it running down after a period of time? And is there an agreement that you can make available to us, a management agreement between UDeCOTT and Hyatt as it concerns that aspect of its operations? So I'd like to find out through you, Mr. Chairman, if there's a reserve fund, how much money is in that fund. I'd like to also know when is refurbishment due on this very prestigious hotel, and whether there is a management agreement with guidelines as it relates to that arrangement, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. The Hyatt is in fact a very profitable undertaking. Yes, there's a reserve fund. That reserve fund is put aside simply for maintenance, is approximately 51 million. Notwithstanding that, the board recently awarded a refurbishment contract to, I think it's Boeing Batiment, to undertake major refurbishment and upgrade works to the Hyatt in the sum of 122 million. Yes, there's a management agreement, which we call the Hotel Management Agreement, and we will make that available to the committee. I must say that the Hyatt has proven to be one of the better investments and one of the more successful hotels in Trinidad, and the board and management will do all in its power to ensure that the hotel maintain its standards by constantly reviewing the maintenance and ensuring that the necessary works are carried out.
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garcia, what was the reserve sum inherited by your board when it took office as it relates to Hyatt? Was it 50 million? Was it under 50 million? Was it above 50 million? And what percentage of the profits of Hyatt goes towards that reserve fund? And does it go on a monthly basis to ensure that there is a continuous build-up so that when the time comes, and you may wish to advise the chairman on behalf of this committee, how often does the hotel management agreement spells out the time frame for refurbishment and maintenance works of this very prestigious structure and organization?
Okay. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I would ask the CFO to answer the question in terms of what was the sum prior to the board's assumption of office. And what is it now? In terms of every 5 years, we are mandated by the hotel management agreement to undertake major refurbishment work. On a yearly basis, the Hyatt identifies both capital and maintenance work, which I would say is run-of-the-mill, that is done on a yearly basis. But in terms of major refurbishment, the hotel management agreement calls for it every 5 years.
All right, so just before takeover, an estimated amount would be in excess of $250 million TT, and thereafter the fund stands at $280 million currently. The exact percentage, there's a monthly amount that we contribute every month. The amount averages between $800,000 to $1.1 million per month. That goes into the FF&E reserve account, which is specific for capital refurbishment. It forms a percentage of the total, I'll have to get back to you on that one. I'm not too sure. Yeah?
Mr. Chairman, through you, we will provide the exact amounts in writing to the committee.
Okay, you have one?
Yeah, Mr. Chair. But did you say 50 million in the reserve fund, or was that an
Correct.
error?
No, there's two funds. What you have is two accounts. The reserve, there's a separate reserve fund that is held specifically for capital refurbishment, which stands at in excess of $50 million. And there's another amount which is contributed on a monthly basis, which is separate and apart from the reserve fund, which stands at $280 million.
Okay,
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Approximately.
Yes, a short one? Yeah.
Yeah. Mr. Garcia, the question of the Couva Children's Hospital, that is very close to the hearts of the citizenry of this country. I know that UDeCOTT is the project manager of this very important structure. I would like you to share with this committee whether that hospital has been formally handed over by UDeCOTT to the Ministry of Health. That's the first thing. If it has not been handed over to the Ministry of Health thus far through the Southwest Regional Health Authority, could you shed light on a statement that was made recently that trucks are appearing in the night and huge equipment from this very important facility are being removed, or equipment rather is being removed from that site? Is that just rumor? Is that a fact? Is there security to verify that? Or can you verify that is not true? And finally, Mr. Chairman, through you, could Mr. Garcia indicate whether what I read in the papers is true, that this hospital will be formally handed over by the end of this month? So right now you are in possession of this hospital, and anything that happens here, UDeCOTT will be liable, culpable, and responsible.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the Couva Hospital is still in the hands of the contractor, which is Shanghai Construction Group. We have been advised by Shanghai Construction Group that they will be in a position to hand over the hospital by the end of May 2016. So that's the end of this month. They have been at pains to remind us that their contract period comes to an end in July 2016, so there has been no time overrun. So until the contractor hands over the facility, we will not be in a position to hand it over to the Southwest Regional or to the Ministry of Health. In respect to equipment being removed from the site, we took note of the statement by the Leader of the Opposition, and on my instructions, the project management unit asked the contractor, Shanghai Construction Group, to indicate in writing if this was in fact true. They wrote last week indicating that no equipment has been removed and that it is in fact not true. We will be willing to make available to this committee the letter from Shanghai Construction Group indicating that no equipment has been removed from the site. Our project management staff has also indicated that no equipment has been removed. In terms of liability, the liability still rests with the Shanghai Group of companies. UDeCOTT will assume liability when the project is handed over to UDeCOTT, and as soon as that is handed over to us, we will do all that is necessary to ensure that the relevant agency takes possession of the Hoover Hospital.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I acknowledge Member Antoine.
I cheer to you, to Chairman of UDeCOTT. There's a lot of banter about this Hoover Children's Hospital, and you are saying that this hospital has not been handed over by Shanghai, the construction firm, to UDeCOTT. Could you explain to me what happened in either August or September last year when there was an opening of this hospital?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I was not there, so I'll ask the Chief Construction Officer.
Mr. Chairman, in August of 2015, marked the end of the construction period and the commencement of commissioning. So the ceremony really was a ceremony to indicate that commissioning had started of all the major medical equipment and the MEP installations.
So if I'm getting right, that ceremony was just to say that the commissioning of the equipment, not the completion of the project.
No, it was not the completion of the project as a whole.
Just to clarify, the original completion date, according to Shanghai Construction, the contractors would have been 2016, or?
Yes, July 2016.
July 2016.
Yes.
And we're hearing also from the chairman, I believe, that they will be ready in 2017?
No. They have indicated they will be ready at the end of this month, May 2016.
Oh, I thought I heard 2017 mentioned somewhere.
Sorry.
Oh, okay. Harry?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Mr. Chairman, just staying on the Hoover Children's Hospital, on the northern side, the roadway, we would have seen photographs of it collapsed. The information we have is that that was caused as a result of a retention pond being constructed. Could you confirm whether that is so? And could you also indicate to us the status of that roadway? Now, bearing in mind that you were saying that by the end of this month, the entire facility could be handed over, but could you just give us an update? Secondly, with respect to the Arima and Point Fortin hospitals, can you tell us as to what the causes for the delay in the start of construction? And is there any truth to the statement that these two facilities, the construction, it is, from what we are hearing, may be re-tendered? I would just like to ask you whether there is any truth to that, or whether in fact that whatever has been agreed to will commence, and if so, by when? So what's the delay and when will it commence?
Mr. Chairman, through you, let me deal with the two issues, the two last issues, and the question of Coover, I will ask the chief construction engineer to deal with that. In respect to REMA, my information is that construction works are ongoing in REMA. There was some delay in the government of Trinidad and Tobago meeting the local component of the expenditure. That hurdle has been overcome, and the contractor is proceeding with work at Arima. At Point 40, work has been temporarily slowed down because there has been a delay in the signing of the government-to-government agreement for the construction of that hospital. That agreement is between the Austrian government and the Trinidad and Tobago government. The Ministry of Finance has come up with a temporary solution of advancing some $90 million in the interim. That money should be released to the contractor this week, and work will resume on the Point 40 hospital. So the question of retendering does not arise. Work is proceeding on Arima, and work will resume on Point 40 in the very near future.
Mr. Chair, if I may respond to the query on the failure of the road. It was indeed triggered by the excavation works on a detention pond. The detention pond has since been completed. The road rehabilitation is in progress. In fact, it is close to being completed. The final subbase has to be placed and compacted, followed by repaving.
Okay. I have a question here from a member of the public asking about the status of the red houses. And what can you tell us about that, the restoration of the red?
Mr. Chairman, in terms of the red house, UDeCOTT would have had a budget in 2012 for the refurbishment of the red house at 441 million. UDeCOTT would have gone out to tender after having, of course, completed the designs and tender documents. The construction component of that budget was 241 million. The bids received by UDeCOTT range from 420 to in excess of 600 million. The board of UDeCOTT took a decision to not proceed with those tenders on the basis that the price were far removed from what the initial construction costs would be. Subsequent to that, UDeCOTT earlier in this year was informed that the Red House projects had been moved to the Office of the Prime Minister, and UDeCOTT is in the process of reviewing its procedure for implementing the project, and we are looking at breaking the project into distinct construction packages with a view to removing some of the risk associated with the project as when tendered as a whole. And the estimates we are working with currently is in the region of 265 million for construction. UDeCOTT is currently finalizing the packages. We have 15 packages, and we expect to have those completed by June, following which we would undergo the tendering process, and we hope to have work commence in the fourth quarter of this year.
So just to be clear, your estimate of the project, the original estimate was around 200 million, and the lowest bid was almost twice as much as what your estimate of the project would be.
That's correct.
That's correct? Okay. So then we're looking at an actual completion date for this project, probably at least 2 years.
2 years from commencement.
Okay. I wanted to change gears a little bit and ask about the core business of UDeCOTT, right? Which is really management of projects. And ask the chair, or maybe as chief construction engineer, you might answer what are the main operating costs that makes the difference in UDeCOTT in terms of the company, whether the company runs at an operating loss or operating profit? What's the main drivers of the operational costs?
Okay, in terms of the project management aspect of UDeCOTT's business, our fees are based on a set percentage of the total construction expenditure, so that our income is tied directly to the volume of work that we do in a particular period. In the last financial year, well, as at December 2015, UDeCOTT would have received significant sums based on the fact that the portfolios at that point in time were significant. So we are currently not at an operational loss, but that is also primarily based on the subsidization of our project management activities by our other strategic business units, most significantly the facilities management aspect of our business.
Can you elaborate on the source of revenue from the facilities management? I mean, could you give us a little more detail?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. The primary source of our income on the facilities management side is from the operations of the Hyatt Hotel. Currently, that is roughly about 60 million annually. And that is what drives our operations and allows us to meet all of our mandates.
Okay. And could you just mention of any other other than the Hyatt?
Sure. We have the Government Campus Plaza car park, as well as the International Waterfront Center car park. We also receive facilities maintenance fees as a result of the maintenance activities we do on various facilities, including towers C and D, the car parks, the Office of the Prime Minister, the Prime Minister's Residence and Diplomatic Center, and the Government Campus Plaza, so the Customs and Excise building currently, and soon to be the Immigration building, as well as the Ministry of Legal Affairs and Ministry of Education towers.
The campus car park, is that the same as parkade or is something different?
Yes, that is the parkade.
That is the parkade, okay. All right. Member Karim?
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Through you, will you be able to tell us when you assumed office, what was the status of your accounts payable? That is the volume and the number of entities that were outstanding. And by what amounts have you been able to reduce it, or what's the current status of it? That is, are you continue to make these payments, and by what time do you expect the majority of these payables will be made?
Okay, Mr. Chairman, through you, I'll have to ask the CFO to answer, and if he cannot, we will provide in writing, but I will see if he will attempt as far as possible.
I prefer to gather the information provided at a later date.
Okay. So we note the commitment to provide an answer to the member's question in written form at a later date. Any follow-up, Member Karim? Okay. Acknowledge Member Antoine.
When you speak of the Hyatt Hotel complex, this includes this portion, Tower D, that is occupied by Parliament and other government offices. Is that included in your estimate of the profitability of the Hyatt complex?
Okay. In relation to the facilities management, the Hyatt building itself is what I was referring to. In terms of Tower C and D, we receive income on the facilities maintenance side of it. So UDeCOTT provides services for the electrical, the plumbing, the common areas, and in that regard, we receive a set percentage of those expenditure on a monthly basis.
So who pays for the parliament use of these facilities and government offices in these Tower D and C?
UDeCOTT has entered into arrangements with the government of Trinidad and Tobago for the lease of these facilities. So the lease is paid from the government to UDeCOTT in respect of the occupation of the various ministries and agencies at Towers C and D.
Okay. Member Diot?
Thanks, Chair. The Urban Development Corporation has been traditionally known for the largest projects on the island. Your relationship with other ministry stakeholders, for example, sport, community development, in light of the economic status and your technical ability, what is UDeCOTT's operation modification towards this arrangement with other ministries?
Mr. Chairman, through you, the member is correct. UDeCOTT can be considered a big project company. In fact, most of our projects exceed 500 million, and in particular in the health sector exceeds $1 billion. On assumption of the new board, we took a decision to use some of UDeCOTT's project management experience to assist in the implementation of what we would call small projects. Currently, we are assisting the Ministry of Culture and Community Development with the construction and completion of a number of community centers throughout Trinidad. We are also assisting the Ministry of Sports in the completion of a particular project in Bagatelle, I think is the Digger Martin Sporting Complex. In Tobago, we are assisting the Ministry of the Division of Education, Youth and Sport Affairs with the construction of 4 multi-purpose sporting facilities. In order to do that, we are currently re-looking at some of our procedures to involve small and micro contractors. Sometime later this week, we will be publishing an ad inviting small and micro contractors to register with us. We are including in that registration process a training component so that we can ensure value for money. So in short, what we are doing is using UDeCOTT's vast experience in project management to trickle down to reach and touch the small, medium, and micro contractor, because one of the complaints of the local contracting fraternity is that UDeCOTT is a big contractor company. And if you look at its track record over the last 10 years, you would see that only very big contractors in most instances participate in UDeCOTT projects. And there's a reason. If you're doing $1 billion contract, you would not be able to employ a small contractor. Even in our approach to the Red House project, the chief construction engineer has indicated that we are breaking it up into 15 discrete packages. Our approach to the refurbishment of the Brian Lara Stadium we have some 17 packages. So what we are doing is shifting gears, trying to accommodate the small and medium contractor. As I said earlier, we are also going to have a training component so that we bring our contractors up to speed, and what we are doing is attempting to spread the work among as many contractors as possible. We also, in terms of the community centers, we want to touch the communities. We don't see it feasible to bring a contractor from Digger Martin to do a 4 million community center in Matlot, or to bring a contractor from Cedrus to do a project in Couva. So that we are shifting gears, and that is one of our strategic objectives, to involve the local contracting fraternity in the projects that UDeCOTT undertakes.
You have a follow-up?
Chair, thank you. I'm very pleased to hear that, and I'm sure the small contractors are anxiously waiting this ad to come out. One question is, you indicated there's a training for the small contractors. Is there in your strategy some form of transfer of your expertise to the ministries that you are supporting? Thank you.
No, but it's an idea that we will explore.
Okay, the chairman mentioned the Brian Lara Stadium and some of what is going on there. Could you elaborate and give us a more update on what is happening with that
Okay,
project?
through you, Mr. Chairman, I'll ask the Chief Construction Engineer to.
Mr. Chairman, UDeCOTT is currently preparing, as the chair indicated, packages for going out to tender for the completion of the Brian Lara Cricket Academy. In 2010, the project was by and large about 95+% completed. However, because it was left unattended, some deterioration took place. So we had engaged consultants to prepare the packages. Those packages are currently going out to tender. I think by the end of this week, we should have all the packages out to tender. We expect that works will commence, of course, once we have confirmation of funds, that it would commence sometime in August to September, and completion would be within 6 months from this start.
Well, you said the works were 95% complete in 2010?
Yes, in 2010, the works recorded as 95% plus complete. There were some works in progress that were not completed, and is related to car park lighting, the field irrigation system, scoreboard, the sewage facility, elevators, etc.
Okay. So there was nothing, no major hindrance to that project being completed. Is that what you're saying? Because you give in a timeline of 6 months. You know, that's,
6 months from the start of construction.
and even with the deterioration that took place, the project will be ended in 6 months. Okay.
Well, that's the schedule we are working with currently.
Member Mark?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garcia, that site, the Brian Lara Cricketing Academy, is that site under the ownership of the government through UDeCOTT, or is it still under the ownership of the late Hafiz Karamat Construction Company? Do we have access, unfettered access to that site at the moment, or are there hindrances that you had to confront as UDeCOTT, as you seek to refurbish and complete, and negotiations would have had to be entered between UDeCOTT and this company that Hafiz Karamat used to own at one time?
Mr. Chairman, through you, when my board assumed office, we got a report on all of the projects. One of those projects was the Brian Lara Cricket Academy. We visited the project. There was absolutely no hindrance because we were advised that the contractor had walked off the site some 5 years or 6 years hence. We sought legal advice. The legal advice advised us that we had no impediment. UDeCOTT was also in effective possession of the site. We had security on site, so that there was nothing preventing us from accessing the site and starting whatever works were required. To date, we have not had any conflict or negotiations with the contractor. Some works have already begun on the Cricket Academy, and as I said earlier, we have not encountered any difficulty. As far as UDeCOTT is concerned, that site is effectively under UDeCOTT's control, and sometime before the end of this year, we would complete the project and hand it over to the Ministry of Sports.
Would you also indicate whether that project is expected to come in on time and within budget? I think you had estimated some $90 million. Is that still the final or the tentative figure that you're working with, and you're hoping it will not cross 90?
We are still working with the $90 million budget. In fact, at one of our board meetings, the consultant made a presentation, and we have gone into almost minute detail in terms of breaking down the costs, and the cost is just below $90 million. As the chief construction engineer has said, we have gone out to tender. We expect that with a competitive tendering environment, and given the state of the construction industry, that we would in fact come in slightly below the estimated budget.
Go back to the earlier question that you had raised, and on behalf of the public, in terms of the Red House. Are you going to be engaging in a redesigning and rescoping of the works of the Red House? And if so, would it mean that there will be additional costs in this regard? In addition, when are we going to have open tenders? And when will this begin in terms of contractors being able to come and collect their bids, as the case may be? What is the time frame for this exercise? And are we talking about a rescoping and redesigning of the original project that was designed for the Red House? I'd like to get some clarification on that.
Through you, Mr. Chair. UDeCOTT, the Office of the Prime Minister, and the Office of the Parliament are currently in the process of reviewing those designs in accordance with a revised project brief to ensure that the end user's requirements can be maintained and met in the new environment in which we're operating, which is the economic climate. So yes, there will be redesigns in accordance with that mandate. We expect that those designs will be completed by July of this year, and we would therefore be in a position to tender shortly thereafter. At this point, the intention is to have 15 separate tender packages, which will be issued publicly for tender to hopefully smaller contractors, as Mr. Garcia was saying, to encourage smaller contractors to become involved in UDeCOTT's projects.
Okay, Member Karim.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Mr. Chairman, through you. Earlier on, mention was made of the fact that this new board has got into a situation where you are doing more in-house project management. And my colleague, Mr. Mark, asked the question about the 90 million for the Brian Lara Cricket Academy. Well, it seems to me, from what I would have heard this morning, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that your estimate for the refurbishment of the Red House was 200% less than the lowest bidder that would have been submitted. One may ask the question whether your capacity in-house is really in any way falling short of what is expected, or what would have cost this additional sums of money that the lowest bidder was 200% less than your in-house project management figure. I also want to ask the question, what was that figure that you would have come up with? And if you can tell us what was that lowest bid, because it is not offered to anybody, so that we can get the public can get a sense as to what we are comparing with.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, through you, and then I will ask the technical staff to expand. The Red House project, by and large, we were advised by external consultants. Those figures were arrived at by an external quantity surveyor of, I would say, he is one of the more recognized quantity surveying firms. My sense is that because it was a refurbishment project, all of the contractors played it safe, because in a refurbishment project, you can get surprises. And the contractors factored in what I would say an insurance to ensure that if there was a surprise, they would not suffer financially. Additionally, the work that was required is, in some instances, very intricate work that requires foreign help or foreign assistance, in particular the ceiling works, the ironmongery, even the restoration of some of the walls. Having regard to all of those factors, I think the contractors played it safe and also failed to recognize the economic environment that we operate in. Having regard to that, the board took a decision not to proceed with that process and to find another way to reduce the cost. In terms of who the contractors were, I would invite them to give further explanation.
Through you then, Chair. The the budget was 241 million for construction only. The lowest tender came in at 411 million, and that was submitted by Shanghai Construction Group. And the highest came in at 694 million, and that was submitted by Bouygues Bâtiment International and Trinidad and Tobago Limited. The third bid in the region of around 535 million, correct, I'm stand to be corrected, was submitted by NH International. Okay. As to how we expect the bids going out the second time around to come in any differently, as the chairman has indicated, we believe that a significant amount of fat was built into the tenders simply because of the fact that it was one contractor and not several packages. So what we've done is to review the approach and to use several contractors, which will reduce the preliminaries and reduce the costs associated with that. The bids that we saw for preliminaries alone, the allocated sums were in the region of $75 to $100 million. So by packaging the project the way that we have and UDeCOTT taking on the construction management, it is expected that that's an immediate cost savings that will be passed on to the project. So the lowest tender was roughly 70 to 80% above our budget, and 100 million of that would have been related specifically to preliminaries, which we have eliminated with the new approach going forward.
Okay. So, Member Mark has a follow-up on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask Mr. Garcia. We know that the First People have had a big fight with the government, with the Red House, with Parliament on this matter of bones and how they are supposed to be treated and their ancestors. I wanted to ask, with this projected period for completion of the Red House, how is UDeCOTT planning to treat with the concerns of the First People? Because I know they have been making a lot of interventions all over the place, including threatening to go to the United Nations. So I would like to know how UDeCOTT plans to treat with the First People in an effort to ensure that there's a smooth transition in terms of where we want to go in 2 years' time in terms of returning to the Red House.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the issue with the First People is indeed a very sensitive one. We are hoping that we do not, or we minimize excavation works so that we would not have a recurrence of what transpired earlier in the project. We at UDeCOTT are committed to consult with the First People. We would do nothing to upset them, and we are working closely with the officials of the Parliament to ensure that the project proceeds as smoothly as possible, and whatever consultation is required, we at UDeCOTT are prepared to undertake the necessary consultations to ensure that the project comes in on time and within budget.
Okay, Mr. Chair. I'd like to go back to something we touched on at the start, because we're coming near the end. So in terms of the documentation required to do the audited reports and to bring everything up to date, it seems as though when these documents were taken back then, there was no backup copies of them in the company. Has that been rectified, or do we now have, so we don't have a repetition of this again, if the OFF Commission or whatever new commission and the Anti-Corruption Investigations Bureau comes and sees documents, it throws off the companies for years to come? Could we get some clarification?
Mr. Chairman, through you, we are in fact taking steps. I would ask the CFO and the Chief Operating Officer to respond.
Chair, the records management and storage of records is one of the items that received significant attention immediately following the OFF Commission and the removal of the records from the organization. Since then, a concerted effort has been undertaken to ensure that all departments have redundancies built in terms of hard copies, electronic copies, off-site storage for all records in the organization. We are confident that at this point in time, the situation would not recur if we were to be the subject of an investigation and records being removed from the organization. There are redundancies and backups located on-site as well as off-site.
And can I ask how far back does this redundancies, if you know, if you could provide that answer? last
this-
year or year before, or how?
The process would have started in 2012, and as far as the electronic copies goes, I believe it is current as of back in 2012. Further back than, earlier than that period, we are still in the process of making electronic copies, and it is a slow process, but we have commitments to getting it done, and we have taken the steps to ensure that it is done in the shortest possible time.
Member, come on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Garcia, I want to go back to the Brian Lara project. We were told here this morning that it would have been 95% complete in 2010, and there were no hindrances or impediments to UDeCOTT completing the project. But despite that, it was abandoned. Could you give the committee some idea as to if we would have completed that project in 2010, what the cost to complete it would have been as opposed to the 90 million we now required to spend?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I cannot give an accurate answer. I'll ask the project management staff to attempt to answer, and so we'll have to answer that on the separate cover.
Follow up, yeah.
In Trinidad and Tobago, we recognize that a number of our big projects tend to have cost overruns. As the project manager for most of these major projects, does UDeCOTT have anything in place to ensure that we minimize those cost overruns or other breaches of the contract to ensure that we stay within budget?
Mr. Chairman, as explained earlier, yes, we have monitoring of all aspects of the project implementation, cost of which is one. Also, we have written into our contracts clauses for liquidated damages for contractors who have gone beyond the contractual completion date without, of course, having obtained approval of extensions of time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, I have one additional question directed to the Permanent Secretary. I'd like to know what is the articulation between the ministry and UDeCOTT? What is the general role and what is the expectation in terms of oversight or whatever the articulation is between the ministry and the entity we are examining here today?
The ministry, Chair, the ministry is supposed to provide, well, there are two parts. It's supposed to provide technical supervision of planning, monitoring, and evaluating of the projects. So that's on one aspect. And then at the other end, our role as facilitator in project management through the financing of the projects. For example, how it works is that the UDeCOTT would submit claims, invoices, copies of invoices, and the ministry would request the release from the Budget Division, Ministry of Finance. So, for example, let me talk about me in my role. I would have my officers, as a accounting officer, I would have my officers scrutinize the invoices before merely requesting a release. We would go through and make sure everything looks above board. And if it doesn't look above board, I would write and ask for an explanation, as to, for example, if I don't see evidence of proper tendering or I don't see scope of works attached to the invoices. So these are things I would look for, my officers would look for before we would request a release of funds.
So you play a significant oversight role then?
Yes.
Okay.
There is still, it's still not 100% there, but since I assumed office, have been putting systems in place to ensure that there is even closer supervision. So I'm in the process of, I've reviewed the staff at the ministry, and we're looking at complementing the technical staff to further assist in that process.
Right. And yes, I was just going to ask that, is your staff adequate enough to deal?
No, it's not. It's not.
It's not adequate
No,
enough?
no.
Okay.
So we recognize that, and we've actually, we're in the process through the IDB, through our IDB, an IDB loan, where we have a component, institutional strengthening component, where we will be bringing on a consultant to do a complete review and recommend the type of skills that would be, that would be able to allow us to do a better job.
Right. Because I would assume this calls for a significant quality of people that you would need and in
Yes.
financial accounting and.
So that has been recognized. We have some, but it's not adequate.
Okay. Thank you. Member Mark?
Mr. Garcia, would you say that UDeCOTT has within its bosom or its organization the technical capability and capacity to objectively evaluate and assess projects that are submitted through your bidding processes by various contractors to ensure that they're not pulling wool over the eyes of the people? Or do we depend as an organization on what these contractors submit to us to arrive at a position as to whether the project should cost this amount or that amount? In other words, do you think that UDeCOTT has the kind of technical capability and capacity to properly guide it in its operations and not to depend on what the views are or the submissions are by, let's say, contractors? Do you have such technical capacity within the organization? I just want to...
Mr. Chairman, through you, the short answer is yes, but I would ask the Chief Legal Officer to elaborate as to how we assess tenders before we arrive at an award.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. UDeCOTT has a very rigorous tender evaluation process, and we look at contractors and consultants from many different angles. We look at their proven experience within Trinidad and Tobago. Oftentimes, we look at their experience outside of Trinidad and Tobago. We look at their financial capability, and we do an assessment of their financials from the perspective of net worth, debt-to-equity ratios. Right. Sorry, I'm not a financial person, so current ratios, to see whether they're in a position to, one, undertake a project of the value that we estimate, and two, carry the project for a particular period of time. We also conduct an assessment of the human resources that are intended to be applied to the project, and how our request for proposal document is framed. Whatever team is presented to us in the tender has to be the team that actually does the work on the ground. So that mitigates the risk of someone providing a tender that looks wonderful, but on the ground they're not providing the resources that we require. In addition to that process, which gives us a tender evaluation report, UDeCOTT also conducts background checks on the preferred contractors. And so that involves checking with references, going to project sites and conducting investigations on how the projects, in fact, were implemented. We also do a risk analysis of the firm in terms of claims, litigation, whether they've been blacklisted. And we believe that when we look at all of those elements and put it together, we tend to find that the result we get at the end of the day shows a contractor or consultant who is able to perform in the way that we require, and will give us value for money. We also evaluate in detail the bids. And the bids, I know traditionally in our process, we ensure that we get an estimate before we actually go out to tender. So we have an idea of what the bid should come in at. When we get the bids back, if they're outside of the range that we expect them to be, we engage in significant negotiation by looking at each point within the bid to see where the fat is, so to speak, and challenging the contractors to give us the value that we require. We find that all of those processes, when we put them together, give us the result that we require. And I think our track record in the last few years has shown that we are able to produce and complete projects within timeframes and under budget. Where we do not finish within time, there are procedures in our contracts to penalize contractors for not giving us what we have bargained for. And UDeCOTT has not been shy in enforcing those rights. I trust that answers the question.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to advise Mr. Garcia, you will experience a nightmare in short order when it comes to the Red House as it relates to past contractors who are still there. And the experience, Mr. Chairman, is almost nil. And given technical work to do, and taxpayers have paid tens of millions of dollars, and the work is yet to be completed. And so I'm just advising you, as you are new on the job, you have to be very mindful of some of these challenges. So I understand what your legal officer has said. That is why I raised the question whether we have the in-house technical capacity so that we can rigorously and objectively evaluate and assess. So when a contractor gets a job to do X or Y on whatever project, that person is qualified and that person can do the job and not loiter on the job at the expense of the taxpayers. I just raised that in passing,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman. Let me just go on to another point, Mr. Chairman. I know that you are in the process of completing a number of projects in short order. You have already indicated Couva is to be handed over shortly. Bessel Street Police Station, St. Joseph Police Station, the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Attorney General Building, Ministry of Education Building, and the Immigration Building. Do you or can you provide this committee with deadlines for the completion of those particular projects that I've mentioned? Because I know that they are about to be completed, and could you provide this committee with deadlines for their completion?
Thank you.
To you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Member Mark, I appreciate your warning as to what to expect on the Red House. The Red House has been a problematic project through administrations. I think it's now 17 years that the Red House has been a project without much progress, and over $100 million has been spent. But given our rigorous approach and given the experiences of the past, we are confident we will not repeat those mistakes. The contractors who were there have been, their contracts have been brought to an end, and we are going to have a fresh start. And we are confident we will not repeat the errors. So that is to deal with that. But thanks again, Member Mark. In respect to the time frames for St. Joseph Police Station, I think I would ask the Chief Construction Engineer. So St. Joseph, it's Bessel Street, it's the Ministry of Legal Affairs.
If you don't have
Immigration.
information directly, we can.
I think we have it.
You have it? Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, in terms of the Bessel Street Police Station, we expect to achieve completion there by the end of June of 2016 this year. In terms of the St. Joseph Police Station, we are looking at July 31st, 2016. We have the Maracas St. Joseph Police Station, which we expect by the end of August 2016. With respect to works on the Government Campus Plaza, the building for the Ministry of the Attorney General and Legal Affairs is completed. We're just waiting for the handover of that building. The same applies to the Immigration Tower. The Ministry of Education, we expect to have that completed by the 23rd of May this year.
Okay, thank you very much. As we come near the end of this, I invite any other member to any final question.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chairman. Just a quick one. A lot of the good intentions in terms of cost and overrun by time is to some extent inhibited by the ability for you to find the defects liability period as minimal as possible and to get your performance certificate in compliance with that. Have you been having challenges with that? What is the minimum on an average project? I know it will vary, but if you can give us an idea as to your minimum defects liability period.
Mr. Chairman, the minimum defects liability period is normally 12 months. And within that time, we expect that we would have all identified defects corrected.
Okay, make very quick, wait.
Mr. Garcia, this committee, as I understand it, is here to help. So we would like to ask you what recommendations, given your challenges as chairman of UDeCOTT, the challenges that you are faced with within UDeCOTT, what are some of the recommendations? First of all, your challenges, and what would be some of your recommendations you would like to submit for this committee's consideration, so that when we are submitting our report to the Parliament, we can take into account some of those challenges and some of those recommendations. Because at the end of the day, this committee is about improving efficiency, effectiveness, and economy as we seek to deliver quality goods and services to the people of the Republic of TNT. So I would say that if you cannot supply us with everything now, you can put pen to paper and submit it to the chairman.
Okay.
On behalf of the committee.
Thank you, Member.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Thank you. We certainly will do that. We see the committee as one that is here to assist the various organizations, and we will take the invitation and submit in writing some recommendations that would impact on the smooth and efficient operations of UDeCOTT.
Okay. All right. I now invite you, Mr. Chairman of the UDeCOTT, to give any brief closing remarks to bring these proceedings to an end.
Mr. Chairman and members, I wish to thank you. We came to this committee with some trepidation, having seen what transpired in the past. We came with the view that we were here to cooperate fully and to answer all of the questions to the best of our ability. I leave here, and I think the members of my team and hopefully the permanent secretary, we leave here feeling confident that we did answer all the questions, and whatever is outstanding, we will answer them. We wish to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and the members for the way you conducted the meeting, and to give you the assurance that UDeCOTT is here to, as we say, to build this city and town and to assist in national development. If there are any further questions, we are open to answer them in the future. And once again, on behalf of my team, we wish to thank you and the committee for the very professional manner that you carried out this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And we also would like to thank you and your team for being forthright with us this morning and providing what we consider to be very useful and informative answers to our questions. We also know that in between, you made commitments to submit certain things in writing. The clerk would have taken note, and we would expect those to be forthcoming. And in closing, I'd just like to thank the media and other members of the public or who else may be present at the meeting and the viewing audience. And I now announce this meeting as adjourned.